I am totally lost. Welcome to Mr. Snayl's Wild Ride. My name is Michael, and the wild ride is my life so far. I certainly didn't expect to feel completely, utterly adrift at 43. I'm college educated, relatively healthy, white, cis male living in the United States. I have a roof over my head. I'm happily married. Basically, I have every conceivable privilege that our society has to offer. Different things can happen to different people that make their lives sort of stop. I've ended up nowhere. I'm not saying woe is me. I know that a lot of people have things a lot worse. I only have my own life to respond from. So a little background, I guess, is in order, right? I basically missed out on my teens and my early 20s because I was always very focused on growing up and unhappy being a kid or a teenager, not having resources and not having freedom and, you know, the typical teen problems of all of the troubles and none of the power. In high school, I basically had two main interests, music and finding a girlfriend. Was under the impression if I just had a girlfriend, it would solve all of my problems, my social problems. I didn't really have the expertise to play an instrument, so I couldn't just be in a rock band, right? Saying, I want to grow up and be a rock star, that's not a career path. Fortunately, my high school had a radio station, gave me an opportunity to be sort of music adjacent, so that sort of felt like a more realistic career choice. In college, I majored in broadcasting. I made a lot of great friends, most of whom I'm still friends with today. Essentially had two interests, doing all the things I thought I was supposed to do to be ready for the job market, and finding a girlfriend. I was convinced that college was my last best chance to find someone with whom I would be the most compatible. Dated some, but upon graduation, I could not find a job. I was impatient, and part of it was the market was bad. I was tired of being broke, still living at home, and that didn't feel adult, I guess. After a while, I took a job at the Gap as seasonal help. That turned into a couple years. During this whole time, I was still in touch with a good friend from college. We both came to this realization at the same time. We wanted to start a band. So we made plans to move to Chicago, which was the biggest Midwestern city. I was very excited. By that point, I had come to terms with being single. I was comfortable with the idea, looking forward to moving to the big city, dating around, having a whole bunch of new experiences. I'd never lived in a major city before, always only in suburbs. And just a couple of months before I was scheduled to move to Chicago, I fell in love with a longtime friend. We fell in love. I had known this friend for several years before we fell in love with each other. So here I was ready for this carefree life, and then I was suddenly in a very mature relationship kind of overnight, right before I moved. I'm not complaining though, because I was in love, life was great, girlfriend moved to Chicago, we got married shortly thereafter. It was a whole new era in my life. I was very excited until everything bad happened. That's what my wife and I have come to refer to everything since. So what does that mean? First, my dad was diagnosed with lung cancer. He had surgery, we thought everything was fine. Then my mom was diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, known as ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, a degenerative neurological disorder where your brain is fine, but your muscles don't respond, and that sucked. Then my dad was diagnosed with brain cancer. It metastasized and traveled to his brain, and both of my parents were dead within a year. So here I was, 26, only child, and overnight had no family. That was not something at that age that I was ready for. In some ways, no one can be ready to lose their parents, but I was especially ill-prepared. Shortly after that, before I'd even really had a chance to process what had happened, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer. I'm fine and have been ever since. Doctors suggested that I should maybe want to bank some sperm, just in case there's a problem with the other testicle or whatever, or the radiation afterward, just to be on the safe side. That was a good idea, as it turns out. The other testicle was not fine. I am now completely sterile. About a year or so after the cancer business and the radiation and all that, we began in vitro fertilization, artificial insemination, to try to start a family. The third round was successful, but wound up being an ectopic pregnancy, which basically means that the particle doesn't attach to the uterine wall. It gets trapped in the fallopian tube where it can't get enough nutrition to develop, and also also is a threat to the life of the mother. My wife had a surgery to remove the ectopic pregnancy. Several complications meant that she wound up spending 2 months in intensive care, half of that time in a medically induced coma to fend off necrotizing fasciitis that was destroying her tissues. The doctors said that she had about a 50-50 chance, because that was really as specific as they could get. They said, interestingly, after she got out of the ICU, we found out that the doctors really thought she had like an 80-20 chance of dying. But there's sort of this policy that they don't ever say that, because that's sort of horrifying, I guess. So my wife lived. She had major reconstructive surgeries. It's about 2001 at this point in the story. So she's alive, but a shell of her former self. Before that, she was everything that I wasn't in a lot of ways. She'd been full of life and optimism, creative, full of energy, spontaneous, fun, driven, adventurous, motivated. Now she was none of that. She was almost nothing. Had about 3 good waking hours in the day for a couple years. She slowly began to improve, began to regain cognitive function, some physical function. After a couple of years of recovery, she sort of plateaued. Her recovery lasted about a decade. All told, this was about 14-15 years. Ergo, everything bad that happened. So the good news is that she's much better now. She'll never be all better, but now pursuing a life of her own, and that means that I am in a position to have a life of my own. But my life really stopped when I was 26. Now I'm 43, and I can't really just pick up where I left off, so I don't know what to do. I know that I'm not the only person whose life got sidelined. I'm not starting from scratch, but I don't know what this is. I don't even know how to describe where I'm at. I thought maybe we could help each other. Maybe this would be a way that I could connect with some other people. I have close friends, but none of them live even 50 miles from where I live now. I don't live in Chicago anymore, so there's that. I'm genuinely interested in your comments, so maybe we can sort it out together. I'm interested. What sidelined your life? Tell me. Use the hashtag #everythingbadhappened. I'm open to suggestions for a hashtag that's fewer than 21 characters, so feel free to offer those as well, please. Obviously, I'm at the beginning of this process. If any of you have figured some of this out at all, please feel free to share those ideas and experiences with me too, and use the hashtag #LifeReload. Also, leave any of those comments on this video below. Ideas for future installments of Mr. Snayl's Wild Ride, as my life has been so far. Any questions you have, or that you want to hear more about, leave all those thoughts in the comments section. You can check me out on Facebook at Mr, abbreviated MR, .snails.wild.ride. On Twitter at MR_Snayl, that's SNAYL. On Tumblr, MrSnaylsWildRide.tumblr.com. All of those spellings have snail with a Y because I couldn't make it easy. And click subscribe for new videos every Thursday. So thanks for joining me. See you next week. Bye.